Hey friends, now I know there's a lot of Hawkmoon reviews out there, but I found most of them to be quite superficial, and I'm gonna attempt to answer some of the questions that had not been answered by those reviews, such as, is it worth leveling up? Is it better than my fatebringer or timur's lash? Is it worth the exotic slot? Is the range nerf significant? And is it worth spending an exotic shard in this thing? And before I begin, I know there are a lot of people who don't have the Hawkmoon, but many of the things I will say about the Hawkmoon also apply to many of the hand cannons, especially the bit about the range nerfs, so stick with me. If you look at the stats alone, Hawkmoon is just excellent right out of the box. It's got good range, good impact, good stability. However, there are a lot of people disappointed with Hawkmoon, and I gotta say, I was disappointed too. The thing was, I just couldn't seem to get crits reliably, especially at range. So I'll tell you how to deal with it later when we talk about range, but for now, let's go over the notable stats and perks. For ballistics, you should probably go with aggressive ballistics. It makes the gun kick just straight up, and the recoil is much easier to handle. And if you're gonna consistently land crits, you're gonna want to spend as least amount of time as possible on correcting the recoil. And don't worry about the slight range reduction, as Hammer Forge maxes out the Hawkmoon's range, and you can use aggressive ballistics with no penalty at all. On to the second tier perks. The correct choice is Hammer Forged. You can easily cover Hawkmoon's relatively low slow reload with the armor, and single point sling is just overshadowed by the other two perks. And let's talk about range. The Hawkmoon has a very solid range even without Hammer Forged, and can take everything up to mid-range. However, one of the reasons this gun is an exotic is because it has the damage of hand cannons, but the range and accuracy of scout rifles. And remember how I said I was disappointed with Hawkmoon? I thought it was significantly nerfed in 1.1.1 as I couldn't land headshots beyond mid-range, but as it turns out, I was using this weapon wrong. This is a very important point to understand, so listen please carefully. You gotta aim a little above the actual crit spot. Why? Well, the Hawkmoon's reticle is located a bit above where the bullet actually goes. I'm not sure why Bungie did this, but once you start aiming just a little bit above the crit spot, you'll see that you will get much more consistent headshots from range and can still snipe with that thing. And another fact that may contribute to why people dislike this weapon is that it has lower aim assist than 99% of hand cannons. So that means in order to land consistent crit shots, you really gotta work on getting used to this and aiming accurately. Now let's go over the exotic perk, Holding Aces. This, with the Luck in the Chamber, allows you to have 3 stackable 33% damage buffs per mag. That means you can have all 3 buffs in one bullet and one-shot anything you point at, or the buffs can stack in different bullets. And here's another bit of tip for both PvP and PvE. If you have C or S, you're not gonna get the most out of the exotic perk. So what do? Well, you gotta have some sort of rule of thumb for when to reload. For me, that rule is when I see at least 2 bonus damage by the 6th bullet, I reload. If not, I keep emptying out the magazine. This rule seems to work well for me, but the important part is to come up with the rule that works for you and stick to that rule and not reload after every kill. And about these stackable buffs, in PvP, the 3 stackable bonuses mean that you have about 40% chance to 2-shot people. So that's 40% chance to outgun any other primary. And the thing is, 40% is higher of a chance than you'd think. And once you actually get to use this gun in PvP, you notice those buffs popping up quite frequently. And that allows you to do in gunfights that you really shouldn't. I've lost count of how many times the enemy shot me twice before I even began shooting at him, and I took him down in 2 shots. You know, if you're lucky, you can even get 1-shot kills. I mean, if that doesn't scream OP, I will. OP! So the stackable buffs actually do add up. You just gotta not reload compulsively. The buffs along with the deep magazine of 13 means that you can do things like this with the Hawkmoon. Or this. And it's definitely not an easy gun to use, but once you get used to it, you'll notice the clear increase in KD in PvP. It's so beautiful being able to outgun shit like Thorn, Mythoclast, and the Last Word in any range of your choice. Now, how about in PvE? Basically, it's also great in PvE. What the exotic perk allows you to do is to require 1 less shot to kill an enemy. And you'll find out that you're gonna have an easier time taking down tier 2 enemies even without an element. And with the deep magazine, you can easily challenge majors with the Hawkmoon. It's funny because while RNG seems to be hit or miss in this game, this gun is one instance where random actually works. Combine the bonus damage with the deep mag and high range, and you got yourself a hand cannon that can snipe anything from anywhere in very few shots. Now, I do have one thing to nitpick about this thing in PvE, and that's the low reserve ammo. While it has a mag size of 13, it only has 58 in the reserve. And since I'm challenging tier 2 enemies and majors frequently, I shoot a lot of bullets and I find myself running out of bullets quite frequently. It sucks because otherwise it's a pretty much perfect weapon. So here comes the conclusion part where I answer the questions I asked earlier in the video. Is it worth leveling? Absolutely. Is it worth the exotic slot? Absolutely. Especially since this thing outputs so much DPS, you have an easier choice justifying the use of Hawkmoon over other secondary and heavy exotics. Is it worth investing in exotic shard to max it out? If you have plenty of exotic shards and love hand cannons, I don't see why not. If you're short in exotic shards, then I would say don't worry about maxing it out. Not because this weapon is not worth the exotic shard, but because this weapon doesn't need it. The final damage upgrade from 321 attack to 331 attack only gives you 4% damage increase, and even at 321 attack, you'll be one-shotting everything. And since it has such high impact, you don't need the extra 4% damage. And here is the million-dollar question. Is it better than my fatebringer, Lord High Fixer, or Timur's Lash? And the answer is it really depends. As for fatebringer, it's still the undisputed #1 choice for crowd control, so if you're in an area with a lot of tier 1 enemies, fatebringer will suit you better, while the Hawkmoon will suit you better in areas with a lot more tougher enemies. As for vendor hand cannons, it really depends on the perks. However, the Hawkmoon will perform better in trash cleanup and taking down tougher foes. The same goes for Timur's Lash. Yeah, it has higher impact, and if you want to save an exotic slot for your Icebreaker or Yellowhorn, it would be a good idea to use these legendary hand cannons. For Timur's Lash, if you get one with Luck in the Chamber, you can use it like a ghetto version of the Hawkmoon. In summary, this is an all-round good hand cannon that rewards accuracy and is the pinnacle of 80-20 archetype of hand cannons. Thanks for watching, and I really hope this helped you, especially with the tips I gave you in the middle of the video. If this video was helpful, rate accordingly, and feedbacks are really welcome. I'll see you in the next exotic review, which will cover an exotic machine gun.